All righty. Happy March, everybody. It's nice to see so many new faces here tonight. So welcome to our guests who have joined us this evening. We have a very exciting presentation coming up, so that's all why you're here. But anyway, not to hear me talk. Just to get things started, just going to go through some things. We're still looking for a financial secretary for the board. If you're interested at all, please speak to one of the board members and we'll get you in the right direction if you're interested. We're also looking for a coordinator for outside speakers for next year. Vince has done a wonderful job and all his years doing this. We can't say enough good things with his knowledge and expertise, but he's going to step back. I think he's earned it a second time. He's earned it both times. And big shoes to fill, but we're looking for someone who might be interested in working on those outside presentations and getting those speakers lined up. You would not be an island, of course. Vince would be here to help as well and get you started in the good way. So if you're interested, please reach out to myself or to Vince. So I would like to do some congratulations real quick. The Philadelphia Flower Show had just happened, and we had a few people who got some awards. Betsy Wilson, one of our members, got first place, and also the Garden Club of America Certificate of Excellence in Photography. That's a mouthful. And she also got a third place for another piece that she did. Our very own Jenny Lodge got third place as well. And Vince and Jackie both got honorable mentions. So congratulations to all of them for the flower show. We do have some upcoming events. We have our Intro to Photography workshop, which was rescheduled. It is now May 2nd, and 2 weeks later on May 16th for the second half. We have flyers if anybody's interested in placing them. That would be helpful. We also have some graphics online that can be shared to your socials and things like that. We have a competition coming up. The deadline is fast approaching. It is the 15th. Mike was not able to join us this evening, so I'm going to cover this briefly. The details are in the newsletter if you're interested. There are two subjects. It's still life for pictorial and winter scenes for nature. Like I said, the deadline's the 15th, and we'll have a judging and critique night here on the 30th at the Goggleworks and also on Zoom. All right. So tonight, we'll get to Bill in just a moment. So I just wanted to remind you that Vince has a Lightroom session coming up on the 11th, and he'll speak about that in a moment. And then our next presentation is an outside speaker on the 16th, and it's Jared Platt, and he's going to give a talk on perfect exposures, a holistic approach. And of course, we have a nice list here at Goggleworks on the board of our upcoming events, and it's also available on the website and in the newsletter. Vince, I'll let you chat.
Thank you. Just really quickly, the next outside speaker, Jared Pratt, is phenomenal. I did a workshop with Jared, and he was kind enough to follow that up with us to speak here. I think you'll find him extremely educational, and he did change my process in photography in the darkroom on the computer. And speaking of that, as Angela mentioned, I will be doing a Lightroom program next Wednesday, special night, next Wednesday at 7. People have sent me their images. You could still do that if you do it quickly. See the newsletter for the details. This is not a start to finish Lightroom course, but it's going through my workflow for what that's worth, just to give you an idea of how I do it, and maybe there's some things that you can apply to your process. Very importantly, from my perspective, April 15, I'm doing a Sam Abel follow-up, and this is not just show up. This is, you need to kind of be prepared, because we're going to be asking members, I have asked members to prepare images for that follow-up. The 6-photo poem and the first and best images in your series of images. So please look at the newsletter, review the recording that I did on Sam Abel's philosophies from January, if you're not fully familiar with that, and incorporate those items into what you might be giving us for April 15. And finally, Dan Berg is looking for a volunteer who would be paid to transport 30 by 40-inch images that he is printing for us for the Penn State project. There are two of them. One's in Camp Hill and the other is in Harrisburg. He'll be paying $100 or $125 for the transport. It would require a SUV or van or enclosed truck because of the sizes of these images. So if you're interested in that, Dan Berg, you can find at Berg's Canvas Gallery. Maybe we'll put a link in the newsletter for Dan's email address. And that's it. Angela, here you go.
Thanks, Vince. Also, Vince has two outings that he's hosting. April 11th at the crack of dawn, which I say every week. We're doing the Green Hills Nature Preserve. And then also we have the Philadelphia Photo Walk in the city on June 13th, which is a Saturday. Hope to see you guys at some of those as well. All right, Bill. Are you ready? All right, Bill. I am very happy to introduce Bill. He's a newer member to our club, and he's going to teach us about the wet plate collodion process. This is going to be a hybrid presentation. We're going to do this part with Zoom. Now that I'm done with the announcements and yapping, we're going to have Bill. He has a presentation for us, and then we're going to say goodbye to all of you in Zoom land. Sorry. And then the rest of it's going to be hands-on here. So, Bill, get mic'd up.
I think so, right? Can everybody hear me okay? Everybody good? Okay, cool. Put this in my pocket. Are you doing it? Take your time. Take your time. The application windows there? Yep. That one. Ready to go? Cool. Yeah, I have a little bit of show and tell. Yeah, okay, that's good. That's good. You remember show and tell back in the day, right? Okay, good. Well, good evening, everybody. Hello to everyone out in Zoom land there. My name is Bill Vitiello. I'm here to talk about the wet plate collodion photography process. If you're not familiar with it, you will be by the end of this presentation for sure. So we're actually going to do a live demonstration that's involved with this. And for the folks out in Zoom, I did alter this presentation a little bit. You know, I can talk about it till I'm blue in the face, but you have to actually see the process. So I've actually built in some videos for you to watch. They were recorded at separate times, but at least you have an opportunity to see it out there. And then the folks here will, you know, cut out, and then you folks here live will actually be able to get to see the process. So, all right, so let's get started. So yeah, again, I'm Bill. I'm overly serious amateur photographer. I do not do this for a living. By day, I'm a banker for Ambler Savings Bank. I probably shoot about 90% film. I do very little digital anymore. So I'm also a camera collector. I shoot 35 millimeter, 120 medium format in all formats, 645, 66, 67, 69. I also shoot large format, which is what this camera is here. It's a 4x5. We'll talk about that in a little while. And obviously, I do wet plate. I develop my own 4x5 black and white, but I do not develop my own 35 millimeter and medium format. I turn that over to the good folks who are actually here in the room, and that's Retro Photo in Reading. So shout out to Mike and Juliana and Mechi and the entire team over there for supporting my habit. Thank you. Yes, and Angie's, yeah, and a few others, right? It's very clear to know that I was mentally absent for every science class in school. So We're going to talk a lot about chemistry here. Is anybody in the room a chemist? I need to know immediately. Okay, good. Well, all right, awesome. All right, so what is it? The collodion process is actually the second oldest photographic process. The oldest was daguerreotype, and I'm just going to give just a very brief description of daguerreotype. So this was, you would have a polished copper plate, and you would essentially burn some chemicals with the plate upside down at different stages to get layers of emulsion onto this plate. Then you would expose it to light, you would develop it, fix it, and varnish it. Okay, so that's daguerreotype. So polish copper plate. So anything you see at like a flea market or an antique store or wherever that has some sort of reflection to it, it's most likely a daguerreotype. All right. So this is also known as the collodion wet plate process. So very similar to the daguerreotype, only a little bit quicker, a little bit back in the 1850s. Requires the photographic material to be coated, sensitized, exposed, and all developed within the span of about 15 minutes, necessitating a portable darkroom for use in the field. So I actually have my mobile darkroom. I'm sure you folks have seen it when you came into the room there, but they would actually take something like that out into the field too, and I'll kind of show you some examples of that. So let's go over the history timeline. We talked about daguerreotype. In the 1850s, there also was ambrotype. So ambrotype was something that was an image that was done on glass. So if I could show you an example, and I'm happy to pass this around the room. This would have been done on dry plate. It's very dark, so you're going to have to hold it up to a light or to your phone. The side that I'm handing you is the non-emulsion side, but feel free to take a look at that. That would have been done on a glass plate, probably back in like the early 1900s, I'm thinking, something like that. But the concept is the same for an ambrotype. It would have been done on glass. That is the finished product, yeah. Again, that's probably over 100 years old, so it is kind of dark. Again, if you want to put your light, your flashlight up, to the back of it, you can clearly see what the image is. So next was followed by tin types. The tin type was actually iron. We're using something a little bit different today, which I'll get into in a minute. And then Frederick Scott Archer invented this process. He was known as the father of wet plate photography. We'll talk a little bit more about him in a moment. This process actually brought photography to the masses, right? So this would have been a situation where there was a lot of photography studios that were opening. People had never seen an image of themselves prior to this process and the daguerreotype. So this was incredibly unique for everybody. Wet plate was used well into the 1930s, almost as like a regular thing, really started to fall off after that. There has been a resurgence in current times. And right now it's estimated I'm one of about 1,000 people worldwide who know how to do this process. So there's not many folks out there that are keeping this craft alive. So the 1860s was dry plate, 1889 was film, and 1975, believe it or not, was digital. We've been doing digital for that long. Life as a photographer. So photographers were actually pharmacists. Why? Because they can get the chemicals, right? This wasn't a cheap hobby for your average individual. So early on, only wealthy families and individuals could afford to hire a photographer. And photographers would often travel town to town in their darkroom wagon, and I'll give you some examples of that. Some photographers died because of the consistent exposure to chemicals, right? So especially daguerreotype stuff where they were using mercury to develop. So if you ever heard of Mad Hatter's disease, it was because the photographers would wear a hat, and when they were burning this mercury, the mercury would come up and stay underneath the brim of the hat and expose themselves even further to mercury poisoning. So over time and time again, you got to understand this was a new process, and they were just cranking out daguerreotypes and kept doing and doing because everybody was excited about it. It was almost like when the iPhone was released, right? You see the big long line at the Apple store, right? Everybody was excited about the release of that. People were excited about seeing their image for the first time. And to make an above average living, you definitely needed to open a studio. So let's talk about the father, Frederick Scott Archer. He was 42 when he passed away. He was a chemist, photographer, and a sculptor. He invented the process in 1848, but actually published it in 1851. So this combined the detail of daguerreotype with the ability to print multiple copies. So I'm going to pause there for a second. So with that plate, okay, obviously back in whenever that plate was done, that would have been much clearer, okay? So this is called a contact printer. All right, so what you would do is you would open this up. You would put the plate face down. So let's just say we're doing that. Let's say this is the plate. This is actually 4x5 film, but okay, put it in there. And you put your paper, which was sensitized. You would then close this up. And you would let this hang out in UV light for however long. The photographers knew how long to expose that. And then whatever light was transmitted through was transmitted onto the paper, and they would develop it. So now they can make multiple copies of things. So if you had an image of a family, or if you had an image of a building, or whatever it is you took of a landscape, you took a picture of, and you wanted multiple copies for yourself or to distribute, this is what they use, contact printers. So pretty cool. And these come in all different sizes. This is a pretty large one. This one I think is 11 by 14 maybe. But they come much larger and also much smaller. You can put a small 35 millimeter negative in some of these as well. So you're talking about some old school printing here. In fact, this was January 26, 1918. Somebody actually wrote the date on there. So it goes back pretty far. So you were able to make multiple copies of an image. He published this without patenting it. He's just like, this is a cool process. I want everybody to do it. I'm just going to put it out there. Well, guess what? He wound up dying penniless, unfortunately. And then his obituary described him as a very inconspicuous gentleman in poor health. So, but without him, this process does not exist today. Okay, I collated some photos of studios, what they might look like back in the day. So they were very, very large, typically, very elaborate. And I'm going to talk you through some of the things in this image. So first of all, they're typically a north-facing window, right? Because you got to have the softest light come in. It can't be directional. It's too bright, it's too harsh. So you had a series of curtains that you would either lower or raise to adjust the light, okay? And you'd have the same thing across tracking up top there. Furthermore, you had diffusers right here, come down on your subject. You had reflectors that were reflecting light onto your subject over here. Can everybody in Zoom land see me okay? Right, into your subject there. And then he had multiple things of these, right? He had multiple seats, he had multiple, things to move around, some options for posing, which we'll talk about in a minute. And of course, his very large studio camera. So let's talk about the cameras for a second. I have here with me 4x5 camera, which is what we're going to use tonight. So this would be considered large format, 4x5. But you can actually do this on any size that you can cut a plate for or actually have a holder for, okay? So you can do a little 35 millimeter one. You could do 4x5, you can do 5x7, you can do 8x10, you can do an 11x14. You actually can do what are called mammoth plates. I mean, these plates they're huge. They could be 20x30. If you have the right amount of collodion and the right setup to do the whole thing, it's very possible to get as large as you possibly need to get for this craft. So, but some of these studio cameras are still around. I'll show you. These are some other examples of some studios. So again, you have the curtain system here, right, with the reflectors. He's got his holders there. Same thing here, right? Little situation's got a nice little scene set up with a little diffuser right here as well. And he's got his camera. So a bunch of different setups. So this is the head brace. So they used to use this head brace because exposures back in the day were very long. They sometimes, like in a studio, maybe like this one, maybe on the left, where the light was coming in, but it was diffused. That exposure might be, I don't know. It depends what time of year, depends if you're in what hemisphere you're in. That's where this gets a little complicated, but that's probably anywhere from like 8 to 13 seconds that you'd have to sit still. Can you sit still for 18, 13 seconds? I can't. So putting people in the head brace was actually pretty critical. So it would go behind them. You would just go right behind your neck, and you just lean up against it. You wouldn't be able to see it once the photo was being taken, but that's essentially what it did. So these are some examples here. You got these fine chaps on the left. This guy's smoking a fine cigar and hanging out with his buddy there. So for these guys, you know, who have a situation where he's in the chair, so he's kind of stabilized himself, and then he's leaning on him to hopefully minimize any movement, right? They often did that quite a bit. So if you go back to like this here, right? You could be sitting in the chair and you can just have rest your elbow on it or do something like that. Same thing with this. Anything to stabilize yourself was really, really critical. These two guys are having a pretty good time, I'd say, right? And you could see here where they were moving a little bit, right? So you could see a little bit of blurriness. And then because this process is not a color process, occasionally they would color the tintypes, and they'd add a little blush to the cheeks that you could see up there, just to give it a little bit of a zhuzh. Right? How about the one on the left? So you got the baby picture, but you notice anything behind it? That's the mother. That's the mother holding the baby, but we didn't, you know, they didn't want the mother's picture taken, so they had a some sort of ornamental, you know, cloth or drape on it or whatever. So, yeah. Obviously, the baby was looking at something in particular, and this would have been another example of just the kids not staying still, right? But they try to brace themselves up against that, but still, they're kids. Like, to get them to stay still is almost impossible. So now on some of these tint types, you have these ornamental type of frames to them that kind of varied by photographer. It varied by studio. Some photographers would, and I can't say that this is one for sure, but some would actually put their fingerprint in the lower right-hand corner to let them know that it was their image. Some of them clip the edges, sometimes for ease of getting in the holder, other times for identification as well. So you had, they tried a lot of different things here. You know, this here has a little bit of an age to it. You can tell it's starting to decay a little bit. So this might have been where like the collodion was thin or the varnish was a bit thin and it's just starting to wear away. Just some examples there. So this would be some examples of photographers going from town to town or going around. So they would essentially come to your town, stay for a week and a half, and you'd sign up and you say, okay, if you arrive on a Monday and you book things for Tuesday through Saturday, and people just came and just continued to get just not around the clock, but you know, during the day would come in there, get their image taken. So this guy arrives on barge, right? So photograph saloon. This guy here has a wagon. Another one here says public buildings, residents, family groups. Gunnison views there. And there's another one here. It says Department of State or something like that. U.S. Photograph Department of State, something in that regard. So you have a lot of different examples when this really caught on, how much they were really out there kind of spreading around and capturing images. And that's my mobile photographic van. That's we were doing a shoot in Valley Forge National Park. So all right, so let's talk about the darkroom tents. You can't do this process wherever you go. You have to have a darkroom with you. Okay. Dry plate comes a little bit later. That's a whole nother story. This is wet plate collodion. So you have to have this darkroom wherever you go. So that's why I have one here. I would not be able to show you this process if this was not here. Some people do it from home. Other people would set up a tent like this. So you see this guy here. Well, he's got his assistant, but he's got the whole canvas tent set up. And he's got all his chemicals and his wash pan all ready to go. His seat there, he can sit in the tent and porous collodion and do all that kind of stuff, so. This is an advertisement for a tent, so if you take a look, that looks very similar to what I have back there, right? So you can get it with all kinds of options. So here, working for plates 5 to 7, 6 by 8, 8 by 10, 10 by 12. I mean, you can get waterproof covers. You had all kinds of options that were available to you. And I scoped it out in today's dollars. The average cost for a box itself would have been $300, and the cost for the cover would be $820, right? It's like buying a car and they say you want the undercarriage protection, right? Okay, so this is the sketch for my mobile darkroom, which is back there. I did not sketch this. This was gifted to me by another wet plate photographer. And I also didn't build that, my neighbor and I sat out in his shed for 3 or 4 different sessions and kind of built that together. So I'll give you a guided tour of that a little bit later. So there it is. There's the inside of it. So much similar like when I showed you the darkroom tent, here it is. Here's the tent. I can put the cover over me. I have a red window, which filters light. I have my trays. I have my chemicals and everything I need to do the wet plate process there. This is another similar setup there. There's me in National Park again. And then these are 2 of my studio cameras. So these are both 1910 Kodak 7As on a Century stand. So these stands are incredibly rare to find, yet alone the camera. So the camera I actually found from my neighbor who knew I was into camera, stopped by a garage sale and said, this guy's got this like large format camera or whatever it is. So I said, great. I was like, I'll go check it out. Well, the garage sale had ended by then, but I happened to be coming home from work on the same road. And I decided to knock on this guy's door. And I said, did somebody say you had a camera for sale or whatever? He's like, yeah, why don't you come on in? He's like, I'll show it to you. And sure enough, this is what it is, both the stand and the camera. So it was a little beat up. So I had to order new bellows, and bellows would be this like these accordion looking material that's right here. So I got new bellows for the camera, and that's an 8 by 10 camera, right? So I can do a plate in that camera that's this big, right? So 8 by 10. Or I have what's called a reducing back, where I can use the same setup and do 5 by 7. So I have some flexibility with it. And then I wound up getting a second camera from Mike at Retro Photo when he had it sitting out there. So those are my 2. Okay, let's talk about the chemicals a little bit. Anybody have any questions so far? Let's start with that. Any questions? For which one? So after the yard sale, Mike, I know she is. And I think she knows. Right. The one I went to the guy's door. So I negotiated for both the stand and the camera was like $330. So he did. He said this stand had been sitting in his living room. People used to party around it and put drinks on it and party trays and all this other kind of stuff. He said that has been sitting in his house for years. He used to be a dealer, I guess, apparently. So yeah, he kind of knew what he had, but he was also moving. So I think he wanted to get rid of it. So yeah, I love working with those. I did bring it back to life. Yeah. Well, well, let's go back, get into the weeds here, but that's okay. So this one, I got new bellows for it, but I actually didn't do anything else. I didn't even clean it. So it's got all the dust and everything when I first got it. It's still on there. I did wipe the stand down a little bit, but I didn't sand it and revarnish it or do anything like that. The camera that I did get from Retro Photo, though, I did clean. That camera was in very, very nice condition. I was able to clean that, so that's gonna be a nicer working copy for myself. Okay, let's talk about the chemicals. So first up is collodion. I'm gonna get a bottle of collodion. Time out for a second. So I can actually show it to you. So collodion is a mixture. It's like this syrupy, sticky substance. And it's a mixture of gun cotton, ether, and alcohol. Okay, so has a little bit of a scent to it. You probably smelled it maybe when you came in, possibly, maybe not. Okay, you don't notice it now. Yeah, it'll dissipate, but you certainly don't want to open this thing up and jam your nose into it because it does contain ether. But it's it will dissipate over time, but in like small environments, and this wouldn't even be considered small really, it can become a bit much, but that's also if I'm sloppy with it. I'm typically not sloppy. I'm a very clean wet plate photographer. There's some guys that you'll see that they go to pour the plate and it's running all off the plate, and that's where it gets to be pretty intense. So, and there's all kinds of recipes out there for this stuff. You can different mixtures of salts and bromides and all kinds of stuff. So you can make any kind of recipe you want. Some control the highlights a little bit better. Some control the blacks. Some are a little bit faster. Some are slower. It's the whole thing. We'll get into it. The next is silver nitrate, which is a mixture of distilled water and silver nitrate crystals, and they have to be at a specific gravity of 9%. The developer is a mixture of ferrous sulfate and glacial acid. Sorry for the microphone there. Fixer is sodium thiosulfate, and the varnish is like a gum sandarak and a lavender oil. It's basically shellac is what it is. Just has a little tinge of lavender oil on it to make it smell good. Other items needed. This is my checklist. If I miss any of this stuff, we don't have a plate. I need everything in that list to come with me. Otherwise, nothing happens. Some of them also I bring, like, so tonight I have extra silver nitrate. I have extra collodion. I have fresh developer. I have more fixer in the event that something were to happen. If there was a spill that would happen, whatever the scenario, I have this stuff in redundancy. It's not a preference because it's more stuff to carry, but it is what it is. And then all the miscellaneous stuff, right? Like eye protection, a squirt bottle, distilled water, gloves. You see me wearing the apron. Then the camera, the cable release, the tripod, everything. Make a list, check it twice. Okay, so like we said earlier, the size of the camera dictates the size of the plate. 4x5, 8x10 is a great starting point. This is my modern Vista 45 DX. I also, just a moment, zoom land. I also have this old Connolly automatic. So this would be from probably, what I have there, 1912. So this works just as well as that works. It's the same exact thing. It's 4x5, 4x5. This back rotates. I can do a vertical composition. I can do horizontal. Same thing with that. So pretty easy enough. And it still works. Shutter still works. Very simple. Okay. You can use an old Brownie. You can use a Holga. But you do need a working plate holder. So you can either modify an existing film holder, or you can buy a purpose-built or a 3D printed one. I have a 3D printed one. There's a company specifically called Zebra that makes 3D printed plate holders. So, chemistry notes. Okay, the most important aspect of the chemistry is you're essentially coding your own emulsion for each photograph. Different sets of chemistry are required. We're going to talk about that. They all need to be mixed and then maintained to get the best out of them. So after I get done shooting tonight, another time, I'm going to do what's called maintenancing my silver. So contaminants will get into the silver, which when I put the plate in the silver nitrate, sometimes those contaminants can actually get on, I'm holding film, can actually get onto the plate and create like little spots or little drag marks, or we'll call comets, right? So there's all kinds of debris that can happen with this. So what I'll do is I'll sun the silver. So sunning it exposes it to light. All those contaminants are exposed to the sun. They will fall to the bottom. And then I have to filter all of the silver. So I filter it until it's completely clear. And then I check the specific gravity and then I can do some more plates after that. So, so maintaining it is important. You don't have to maintain collodion. This does have a shelf life though. So like this was opened in October. So this might be good for another few more months. And then after that, it'll probably be no good. It'll start to turn like a red wine color. Sensitivity goes down on it. So chemicals are kind of a big deal. Some of these chemicals are dangerous and you need to take caution with it. There's all kinds of cautions on the back of this thing, obviously, because it's ether. But in and of itself, if it's treated with respect, no issues. Probably the most dangerous in the entire room is the silver nitrate. That silver nitrate, if you happen to splash it or get it in your eye, it will blind you, right? So for me tomorrow, chances are after I touch the silver nitrate and I expose my fingers to the sun, chances are my fingers, you'll see silver nitrate stains on the tips of my fingers. So that on the skin is not a big deal. On the skin's not a big deal, but you just don't want to get it in your eye. So it will stay. Yeah, in fact, that's why I'm typically not dressed like a slob like this, but I don't even know if you can see it on here, but I had a stain on the shirt and I got all my stains on here, right? So it stains the clothes pretty good. All right, let's talk about the process. So what we're going to use, and typically was what's called trophy aluminum, okay? So it's if you got a trophy and you got Best Bowler 2025, this is the stuff that they engrave your name and year on, okay? So that's all this is. So the front is uncoated, or the back is uncoated, the front is coated with a protective piece of plastic on there. So this is actually going to be your substrate, and then we're going to pour collodion on there. So essentially, you take the collodion, I'm not actually going to do it, but you take the collodion, you pour it on, and you rock the collodion into all four corners, and then you drain off the excess. Okay. So now what I'm doing is I'm essentially creating this skin that becomes tacky to the touch. Okay. So once that's tacky to the touch, I then can put it in the silver nitrate bath. What the silver nitrate bath is doing is the silver is adhering to the bromides in the collodion, and it's making this plate light sensitive. Okay, so it'll be in the silver nitrate, it'll be light sensitive, and you'll see we'll walk away, and you can leave it in there for a few minutes, at least 3 minutes, for it to kind of adhere to it. And we do our thing, we're going to go out in the hallway, and we're going to, line whoever the subject up is and get focused, and we're going to mess with the lights and all that stuff, all while that's in what I call the juice, while it's all in the juice. And then we're going to come back and I have to go under the dark cloth, and I have to pull the plate out of the silver nitrate because it's going to be light sensitive at that point. Okay. Wipe off the back of the plate, put it in the holder, and then we can go expose it, come back, develop it, and I'll show you all that. Correct. Yeah. Yeah. So we can, well, here, I'll give a quick demo. So what I'm going to show you here is this is the 3D printed holder. Yes, with the silver nitrate, for sure. The collodion's not a big deal. Sometimes you'll see me barehanded with the collodion. That's not a big deal. The silver nitrate, definitely gloves. Yeah, I will swap out gloves several times. So I'm taking the plate out of the silver nitrate, so for Zoomland, out of the silver nitrate, and then we're going to wipe off the back of it. And then this is the front. We're going to put it face down into the holder like that. And then this is magnetic. And then it's just going to hold it like that. All right, so now it's light tight. So now I'm going to take it out. I'm going to put it, well, here, let's put it right in the camera. So we're going to do one of these. Yeah. Right, so I have my holder. Yeah, go ahead, Vince. Thank you. So we have the holder, right? So I put it face down. So if I lift this up, that's where the image is, right? Okay, that's the sensitive part, correct. So we're just gonna take it, we're gonna drop it into the back. We're gonna lift this up, do what I need to do on this side, expose it, put the dark side back. And then we can take it in the dark room and process it. Okay. Yes, so that's part of this process. Yeah, it's called the wet plate collodion because this has to stay wet the entire time. So it has to be done typically in an environment like this. Probably could last maybe 10 minutes before it starts to dry out. But it typically, if you're outside in like a 75-degree, 80-degree day, you better hustle. Yeah, you better probably do it within like 2 minutes by the time, set everything up. So you got to be, it's really all in the prep. Like the prep is the biggest part of this whole thing. Actually, pouring the plate, putting it in the silver nitrate and everything is not a huge deal, but. Okay, so preparing the plate, I sort of went over some of this stuff already. I just want to make sure, how are we for time? Yeah, not bad. So the substrate we talked about, the collodion, I'm sorry. Yep, got it. The collodion emulsion we talked about, and sensitizing we talked about. So I'm not going to get into the details on that. So for Zoom land here, and for the folks here, this will be a video of me. So my friend was over and he was asking me about this process, so we just wound up recording it. So this will be me actually flowing a plate and then putting it into the silver nitrate. I think anyway, pretty sure. It's not playing, is it? It is a rather large file. All right, well, why don't we just continue, if that's okay? Sorry, folks. Thought that was going to work. Okay, so we talked about preparing the plate, and then this is where we need to go into the dark room. So we talked about loading the plate holder after the 3 minutes, and we need to expose it within like 10 to 15 minutes there. Okay, exposing the image. So exposing it is we're going to check our setup, we're going to focus and compose again, and then we're going to evaluate the lighting for exposure. And typically, evaluating the lighting for exposure takes place outdoors, landscape. Here in the studio, we're going to open the shutter for about 2 seconds, flash some strobes, and we're going to close the shutter off. That's kind of been the proven way to do it internally. So the shutter depends on 3 variables: the aperture, the age of the collodion. The older the collodion, the slower the emulsion, and the amount of UV light. I often just use the bulb setting and count the seconds. So 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. It's not rocket science. You have some leeway. 1 second isn't going to make a difference because the speed of this emulsion is so slow. Has an equivalent ISO of 0.5, 0.5 to 3, depending on what recipe you get and what sensitivity you have. So this requires a lot of light. So in daylight, you can work in open shade and you do a test of like 5 seconds at f8 maybe, and then 1 to 2 seconds in the sunshine. It really all depends. You really got to do kind of a test plate. So when we first got here, we did a test plate where we made sure all the lighting was okay. So, but you have to do a step. You can do a step plate. So you take different exposures with the plate and figure out what the thing is. And it's trial and error, distance and power. You need at least 2,400 watts per second. If any of you have dealt with strobes, I'm not a strobe expert, but if you've dealt with strobes before, chances are you're probably dealing with 400 watts per second, 600 watts maybe. You're looking at 2,400 watts per second. So it's a lot of light. Like you're basically mimicking sunlight is what you're doing. So Angel will attest to that, right, Angel? Angel got blasted by sunlight. So, All right, so after we take the image, we come in and we develop it. So this is one of the more critical parts, because you have to very quickly and evenly pour the developer over the plate. And I'm dealing with fresh developer today, so the image is going to come up probably within about 10 seconds or so. Ideal time is about 15 seconds, so it's a little bit slower. You can visually inspect it and you know when to actually stop the developing process. But in this particular case, it was probably about 10 seconds. So, so when you start seeing the midtones, you just pour water over the plate and you wind up just washing it until any of the greasy residue of the developer has appeared. And then you can take it out into the light, whether it's this light in here or it's sunlight. Perfectly fine, because you've stopped the developing process. So the final steps is actually fixing the image. And this is the process people love the most, because it looks like magic. So we're essentially doing a negative when we're developing, and the fixer takes it from a negative into a positive image, right? So Angel, we did Angel's image earlier, just as a test. He's almost, are you almost dry here, Angel? Yeah, pretty much. Not too bad. So I know it's going to be hard to see from where you guys are at, but there's Angel's image there, right? So it was a negative when we started, and then we put it in the fixer and it turned into a positive. So, and he's just drying right now. So we'll just let him continue to dry. Yeah, and you can either air dry. There's a few different ways you can do it. All wet platers do something differently. So in some situations, I've actually kept the plate wet and actually put it in a container, sealed the container, brought it home, and continued to rinse it to make sure all the fixer was off. So here, thankfully, I have the luxury of just sitting it under running water for about 10 minutes. So I make sure all the fixer's off of it. But there's times I actually take these plates home wet and continue to rinse them as I get home. Or some of them, they wind up rinsing them and then dry them over a flame. You can dry them in a dry box. You can take a hair dryer to it. You can put it out in the sun. However you can dry it, you wind up drying the plate. It does have like, it gets a little bit lighter, because then when you varnish it, it gets a little bit darker because you're just like adding another layer of something in front of it, right? So it's just probably where it's going to be its brightest. So it's really like capturing it at exposure is really critical. Some people overexpose it. I don't know, it's kind of, yeah, but we got Angel going here anyway. You're almost dry, Angel. And everybody will get to see this process live, obviously. We'll do that. All right, so we have that on the drying rack there. This was me, again, I don't know if this is going to work. This was me at a pop-up event. So let's see if that'll work. Probably not, right? All right, so we'll move on. Sorry, Zoomland. All right, and the final step there is varnishing. So if we didn't varnish that plate, it's very sensitive right now because there's nothing protecting it, right? So it could easily scratch. If you put it out in the sun, it will eventually begin to fade and to do other things, right? Just not good for the plate. So we're actually going to varnish it, and by varnishing it, we're protecting it, okay? And it's going to last at least 170 years. So Angel, you're going to be around for 170 years. Congratulations. Probably find your plate at like a flea market or garage sale or something like that. No, I hope it stays in the family forever, seriously. But it's going to last that long because we know that because we're finding tintypes from 170 years ago. So that's how long they last under proper care and, you know, the initial process of doing it correctly. So that process is no different than actually flowing the plate, where you put the varnish on and you rock it to the four corners, and then you wind up putting it in a toaster oven. You can do it over a flame as well. Anything to just kind of solidify that varnish and then get it to cure for about 24 hours. So anybody that we do a plate of this evening, unfortunately won't get the plate tonight. I'll take it home. I'll scan it for you. and then we'll varnish it and we'll get it to you in due time. So. All right. This is me varnishing. Again, my apologies. I don't think we'll be able to see that. All right, so these are some examples of some ones that I've done. So this is William here. He's like, can I put on these funky glasses and hold this ball? And I said, sure, you can do whatever you want. So that's William. That's my brother. That's my former coworker there. She wanted to get into dressing like a 1930s, I guess, flapper outfit. This is one of my coworkers, Rose. This is Rob. He came prepared. He's like, I dressed in layers for you, right? So he's got the coat, the scarf, the shirt, the whole thing. So, and that's my father there. I asked him to look at the camera. He did not. Love you, Dad. Okay, so this was a shoot that we did in the Bears Mill. So this was actually my second shoot that I ever did. I floated this idea out to some of the folks at the Boyertown Historical Society. And I said, look, you have some really generous donors. I said, it'd be kind of cool if we did like a period set of plates that you could either give to some of your top donors, or if somebody wanted to make a donation for like one of these plates. So we were actually in the basement of the mill and set up a dark room and wound up doing 9 different plates that day. So it took about, was it like 4 hours all in? We did 9 plates. So they all look relatively the same, except for this one, the door was closed, door closed, door closed. So, and this process also sees everything in reverse. So this actually, the stop sign was on the right-hand side of the image. So, and they look the way they do because they're partially drying. You're seeing the reflection. It's not a true sense of what the plate actually turned out. They turned out very nice, actually. So that was the Bears Mill project. And then it's just some other small examples here. Somebody had a question? Yeah, we did a little bit of still life there. Yep. And then this is Warren here. Warren's in the house tonight. He's there with his guitar. We were at Valley Forge. And some of those plates are in the back. So feel free to take a look at those. They're all varnished and protected. So, I don't recommend handling all of them, but if you want to pick up 1 or 2 of them, no issues there. That's one of my old cameras, and this is a ball of twine. So all this stuff here, right? Some of these like imperfections, they all mean different things. And this essentially is my holder, this holder here. So when you get silver nitrate kind of caught in some of the corners, so you can see it there, it was wet a little bit. When you get it caught there and it gets and transfers onto the plate, sometimes it can travel and do what's called oystering. So, so there's that. But if I ever had an issue, like a major issue, there's kind of a Bible for all this stuff, right? It's called Chemical Pictures. And I literally could come into here and I can see wherever the chapters are here. If I'm having an issue with something, it will tell me exactly what the issue is. And for some reason, I can't find it in here. Can't clean. You can. So once you're in between plates or whatever, you can pull the dark slide out, you can wipe it down, and then sometimes I'll take this out. It tends to live in the corners most of the time. So I just try to get the best I can with it. It's not, again, it's not a perfect thing. This isn't a perfect craft. There's some really good wet platers out there that are perfect, but I love the imperfections of it. That to me just kind of draws to it. And there's different things happen with some of the emulsion here. Like I said, if you got debris on it and you wanted to flow your developer on there, sometimes it gets these comets. So they're called comets. You kind of see it running across the plate. So there's all kinds of different artifacts and stuff. But if I ever have an issue, this is what I typically will reference. And this has all my information about chemicals in there and so on and so forth. So this book is extremely, extremely useful. I believe that's it. I have for the presentation. Does anybody have any questions? Actually, right on time. Juliana. Yeah, so so I'm gonna repeat your question for Zoom land out there. You're talking about reusing the chemicals, right? So collodion, you do not reuse. So we're gonna pour it on the plate. Whatever excess we have does go back into the bottle, okay? The developer, we do not reuse. That just goes right onto the plate and then we rinse it off later. The fixer you can reuse. So you can reuse the fixer, you can filter it because it'll build up some sediment, but you can reuse the fixer. Yep. So saw some other hands. Yes. Oh, yeah, thank you. Yes. So I think it's yeah, so the question was how I got interested in the wet plate collodion process. So I think it was really over COVID, right? More than anything. I'd always been into photography, started out with digital, and then over COVID got into film and then collecting cameras. Well, was watching a little bit more YouTube over collodion or over COVID than probably I needed to, but I was always fascinated by this process. And I'm like, could I actually do this? Like, I have no darkroom experience. I've never developed anything a day in my life. I'm like, can I actually do this? So I set a date for myself. This was probably in the summer, fall of what would have been 2021, probably. And I set a date for myself. So spring of 22, I was going to start pouring plates. So I knew I wanted to order the chemicals and have them all delivered. I knew I needed to get the plate holder, right? I needed to get everything essentially. And I learned how to do wet plate from watching YouTube. Just practicing. My first plates were I don't even know if I don't think I have an example of them, but my first plates they were pretty bad. They're pretty bad. I missed collodion, I missed the developer pour, but by like the fourth or fifth plate, I started to get okay with it. And this process still has its challenges. It's never a perfect process. You never just make an image here, you're gifted an image, essentially, right? Because of the way the chemicals just react with one another and the substances and the temperature and so on and so forth. So, yeah. Yes. I think it was just curiosity more than anything. Yeah, I was watching the videos and I'm like, wow, I'm like, what are they doing exactly? Like they're making their own emulsion. Like it wouldn't comprehend with me. And I continued to watch more videos and watch more videos and watch more videos. And people were using different techniques and then using different chemicals and so on and so forth. So that was where the curiosity peaked for me. That no, I don't collect tin. I have one tintype besides my own, and that was gifted to me. I've never purchased a tintype. I like history, but I'm not a buff. Yeah, I'm not a buff. Yeah, for sure. But I was a photographer first, correct? Yeah, but I started with digital, 1.3 megapixel Olympus, little point and shoot kind of thing. So, with the little clamshell cover, but I don't. No, that was long gone. I sold it to a coworker years ago. Yeah, they're worth some money now, right? Yeah, yeah. Mike will tell you that. Yeah. He's like, I got enough. But yeah, curiosity. I just continued to make sure that I followed through with my promise that I was going to do some plates in the springtime of the following year. So, yeah. I think it was. So the question was, it was the magic of the whole thing. I think that's part of it. The other part of it is that I have the opportunity to carry on something that started back in the 1850s, right? Again, I'm one of less than 1,000 people worldwide who know how to do it. And for me to be able to carry that on is something pretty special. So means a lot to me. Yeah. Blacksmithing. Yeah, it's another popular. In fact, my neighbor who helped me make he's been a blacksmith for years. Yeah. So he loves the process. So anyway, yeah, right. Any other? Yeah, John. Yeah, so the question is what what sensitivity does the light have? It's not sensitive to red light, correct? So we could probably expose a plate in fluorescent light and it would be okay. I don't like to do it because it can introduce a little bit of fogging to it, but it's very possible that you could just do it under incandescent light and it was fine. It's sensitive to the UV area of the spectrum. Yeah, or the UV spectrum. Yeah. Which is why a lot of natural light is necessary for this process. Yeah. Either open shade or full sun, doesn't matter. Yeah. Could be diffused. Yeah. Yeah.
Valley Forge, it's 85 degrees out. You got 3 minutes to get back to.
Yeah. So the question. Yeah. So the question is how tethered I am to the darkroom. And yeah, wherever I make an image, that darkroom has to be there. Yeah. So the question is if I'm hauling the unit out beyond the car, I can, right? I have a wagon. I can probably skinny this whole thing down and make it one wagon full. Right now it's about 2 wagons full and maybe a hand or two. So I can, in this particular instance in Valley Forge, I knew exactly what I wanted to photograph. I knew where I wanted to park. So it wasn't that far of a walk. So. You know, it's interesting. So Warren was with me that morning. How many people came over to us that morning? Nobody. Nobody. Nobody came. Nobody was. I don't know what was going on. Yeah, because I had the goggles on and the whole thing. Yeah, I looked like a mad scientist. Well, the picture's over there. I looked like a mad scientist, but yeah. So any other questions? I saw another hand somewhere at one point.
Most of your work landscape.
No, actually, most of my stuff is portrait. Just because it's very accessible to me with the question was, is most of my work landscape? It's mostly portrait because I have accessibility with the lights, right? So I can bring people in, I can take a portrait and I can deliver something. Landscape introduces the challenges like that other gentleman had said about packing up the dark room, putting it on site, like getting it to a point where I may not draw a lot of attention. Maybe I do draw some attention to it. So yeah, I'd like to do more landscapes. It just adds a different, because now you're without running water. Like that's another issue too. That's for consideration. So yeah. Any other questions? Oh, are the plates reusable? Technically, yes. Don't like to reuse them though, because when you're wiping them off, you typically will scratch them, which you want the cleanest possible surface for pouring on here. So I don't like to reuse plates. Occasionally I will if I'm doing some tests, but I typically do not reuse plates. Glass, on the other hand, you can. Glass is much easier to clean, and you can reuse glass plates. So that's a great question. So a member of the audience here asked what the plate costs. I want to say they're close to like 30 cents a piece. So they're not super expensive, but you buy 50 at a time and then you're adding the collodion, right? That the chemicals and this isn't so much of the cost as everything else is. The holder, the drying rack, the camera, the stuff for the mobile dark room. That's where it starts to add up. The actual chemicals and stuff like that is not a big, like a bottle of collodion here is, I don't know, this may be $30, something like that. It's not super expensive. So, any other questions? Angel? The question was, have I or will I ever try double exposure? I've never done a double exposure. That I could possibly, yeah, in the future. Yeah, there's some people that do like that ghost photography. So you'll do like one pose and then you do something else or whatever. I don't even know how. I'm not creative like that. So yeah. Anybody else with any questions? Okay. Which one? Is that just my contact info probably? Probably my contact info. You're more than welcome to follow me on social. I'm on Instagram more than anywhere else. Yeah. There I am there. So I have a website. There's a tintype photography part to it. Other stuff is landscape. It's mostly digital, some film. That's my Instagram, and then feel free to email me, so. Yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah, so the question was if I ever do Civil War reenactments, and the answer to that is I would love to, but they're pretty serious people. They're pretty serious people. So if I did something, they would want everything to be period. Right down to the vessels that hold all the chemicals, and like there's no modern camera here. It has to be a period camera and sort of thing. So yeah, even what I wear, how I dress, they request it be period. Yeah, I've explored it a little bit, and they're pretty serious about it. And that's not a knock on them. I think it's great that they do it. I'm not at that point. So yeah, good question. Yeah, correct. Yeah, it would have to be an old school wooden holder probably. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Cool. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Thank you. I think we're gonna try to do some plates here. So I don't know, do we have the names of the folks? Okay. Do you want me to draw them or whoever? Ange, you want to draw them? Yes, folks out in Zoom land, my apologies, the video did not work. Hope you can, maybe I'll do this again in the future. Hopefully you can join again. You can follow me on Instagram. There's I don't even know what they're called up there. I'm so bad at this. There's the reels, but then there's also stuff at the stories. There's up top there. You can please go on my Instagram and take a look there, and there's some videos on there too. So thank you so much for joining. Appreciate it. Yeah. Okay, first name.